Hey and welcome to Squidly Bits, our second channel where we give you the best guides on how to become a better painter on the internet. And today is the monthly critique. And today we have a Squidly Bits sponsor, which is Tacticus, the mobile tactical Warhammer 40,000 game, but more on that later. Let's begin on the first one, which is this Cursed City miniature from Chandler. So first of all, I want to give Chandler some credit. He's done a very good job with the volumetric highlighting, and I think it's especially visible around the top area of the face, on the shoulders here and his leg. He's created a really nice atmospheric light where you have like a very strong sort of like atmosphere reflection from maybe the moonlight or something on the top part of each muscle, the top part of the face. Then he's left the shadows a lot darker. Another great thing that he's done is the reflection with the red OSL. You have the light coming from here somewhere, and you have the light coming in this angle, creating shadows in some of these areas reflecting upwards. There is, however, one thing with this piece that is really distracting for me, and that is the light down here. We've already established a red light from this side, and this light really reads as though there's like a campfire or someone is walking with a torch or something. Then we have the candles here, which is also fire, but all of a sudden it is like a warm yellow. And because of how much this yellow is taking over this part of the scene, this light should be the light reflecting on this side of the sword. You should have more of the yellow light rather than the red light. Personally, what I would do, I would make sure that it has the same light as the other light and paint it dark or orangey, that it matches with the ambient light that you have already from the side. The second thing that I would take a look at is the light placement in this area up here. The shadows up here are almost just as dark as down here. I would fill in the shadows just a little bit up here to connect sort of the skin a little bit more, and do the same on the arm, so we have a little bit brighter on these shadows just here. But other than that, I think that the skin looks really, really nice. It's very professionally done. The last thing that I would do is I would like to create a little bit more of a separation on the OSL light on this pillar here on this side. Just getting a little bit of a like edge highlight maybe on some of these areas here to create an even stronger sense of where the light is coming from. If you don't want to go orange, you can do the same, but just having a little bit of a clearer red separation, like make sure that it's a little bit crisper and sharper on the edges. There's only two small things left that maybe I would do on this piece, and that is one, the leather is highlighted to the same brightness as you have on the metallics. When you know that the metallic would reflect a lot more light, bring that down a little bit, helps draw focus to the face as opposed to the leather part. Lastly, the non-metallic metal. While I do think it looks really nice, there is a little bit of work with the reflection that could be done. You could have the reflection following along with the shape a little bit more, adding a secondary reflection. So if we go back and check the before and the after, especially around the chest area and the arms, you can see kind of the adjustments we've done and then added the reflection. Very small changes because the piece is already amazing. So looking forward to the next mini in maybe next month's critique. Let's hop on to miniature number 2. This one is sent in by Ed, and we're going to be quite quick with this one because he's again done a very good job with the paint job. As it is right now, we have this shadow tone up here. It's the same darkness as the shadow down here, even though this is sort of just like a local shadow. Instead, what you need to do is this shadow up here needs to be painted like your mid-tone. Otherwise, it's going to read a little bit too strong. So we're gonna bring down this shadow quite a lot actually. Already with these small changes, you can see the step we've taken. We then bring in a slightly brighter tone. I think this one is a little bit too peachy for me, so I would like to bring in a little bit more pink tone to the highlights. Just to get some nicer separation when you highlight the top part. We've just pushed up the highlights to a little bit larger area, brought up the shadows as well. It was a little bit too harsh, especially on the forehead. If we now check the before and we check the after, we have a much smoother face. Around the chest area right now, it's sort of dark. You don't want to push it as hard as you've done on the face, obviously, because it's further away from the light source. But I do think you need to push it just a tiny bit in terms of contrast, bringing in a little bit of brightness in there, separate the different body parts just a tiny bit more. I think would be nice for the miniature. Again, we can check the before. Boom! You can see kind of the tiger stripes on the forehead and how these areas feel separated from this area on the cheekbones. And we check the after, how it all kind of blends together a little bit better. Feels like more uniform around the face area. One last thing that I maybe would bring in on this miniature would be just to punch the hairs and the mustache a little bit more, because hair does reflect quite a lot of light. So just bring in even a little bit more of a reflection around his mustache and his hair. This little part up here. Something like this. You can see how much more poppy the contrast is on the miniature. Boom and boom. Next up we have a miniature from Dharm. We have the Chaplain Lemartes to critique. Pretty much all the light placements are fantastic. So I have nothing to complain about with that. But he's here to improve, so we're going to give him some feedback on things that he can improve on. The first one that I would do is that we have a lot of reflections in the miniature that isn't painted in there, which means this one is either maybe painted with an oil wash or there's a varnish added after he's finished the miniature. It does make the miniature look quite messy because we have this same like white reflection depending on from where the light is shining. You see that it moves along with the miniature. Once you're done with a paint job like this, spraying it with a thin coat of ultra matte varnish is going to bring everything together and giving it the same finish. Instead of having these areas that is reflecting a lot of the light that you're using when you photograph, you're going to have the painted light be the main focus of the miniature. If there's anything you take away from this, bring out the ultra matte varnish just to give everything the same finish. It's going to do a massive difference. The other thing that I would like to talk to you about is clean application. And this is something that we quite often talk about because it's probably one of the most common mistakes that people do. When you add a highlight like this one you've done up here, you can see that we have one brightness here, then goes a little bit darker, then goes brighter. And you want to make sure that you have an even application so that you have sort of the same brightness across the entire surface. And then you can bring it up on a slightly smaller surface and just get a little bit cleaner application for that kind of stuff. We have the same thing going on down here. The highlight is sort of just in the center here, but it's not a fully clean highlight in the center. Instead, what we want to do is you want to make sure that every layer that you add, you make sure that every layer is clean before you add the second one. This is something that I can learn from myself. Getting a little bit cleaner application on every area is going to bring it together a little bit more. So we just got to bring in more of that highlight. You see the same thing going on here. The blue up here is the same thing. Get a little bit cleaner application. And that's gonna help you go a long way. You have a great understanding of light, and I would just love to see you kind of apply that with a little bit neater application, and then of course using the ultra matte varnish, and your piece is just gonna be 10 times better. All over your piece, it's like on every side you have areas that it just needs a little bit more of a clean application. You see down here we need to separate different lines a little bit better, more neatly applied, and in no time you're gonna be a world-class painter. If you made it this far in the video, that means that you probably love Warhammer. And my favorite way of getting my Warhammer fix without sitting and painting or playing with miniatures is by playing the tactical mobile Warhammer 40,000 game Tacticus. It's a free-to-play game where you collect different characters, gather your strengths, and fight against enemies across the universe. Gather your strength to either fight against enemies online or play their massive campaign. The game is free to download and play, and now the game is also available on PC for you to download and play on your computer. You have like hundreds of hours of entertainment. Both Lucas and I have spent hours smashing this game, a little bit too much maybe, but it's because it's fun. The game is being constantly updated and they add new features all the time, and the latest edition is the Adeptus Custodes. So you can either use the QR code shown in the screen or follow the link down in the video description to try out the game if you haven't already. If you're already in the game, you can enter the code SQUIDEPTUS and get some really cool in-game treats. And maybe get some Adeptus Custodes stuff very soon. Now let's get back to critiquing more minis. Up next we have Dennis the Menace and his beautiful Stormcast miniature, which I think is a really neatly painted mini. There is two things on this miniature, the first one being the shadow on these calves. These calves, they are part of the same armor piece as all of the other white armor. But the way that it's shaded now is as though there is like a big dark pit between the calf here and the shin pad. So instead of going like full harsh dark brown, you just shade it a little bit, a much smoother color. Most of the times when we see people paint, they haven't added enough of the shadow tone and the contrast isn't high enough. But when you paint a white armor, you want it to be subtle and just to have like a slightly darker tint on the areas that are angled downwards, as opposed to these like really harsh, super separating areas. We just bring everything together a little bit more, bring down the contrast ever so slightly, and then we just make the shadow tone a little bit brighter. We can see the before and after, how much more natural it looks. It looks like it's part of the same armor piece now, as opposed to separated. Around the chest area, I think it's fine because here there is like a clear separation between this armor panel, whereas here it's part of the same area. So here we can be a little bit softer. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is the wings that are now sort of a yellow that goes out to orange. And it makes the wings look a little bit flat, as when something is fiery like this. I prefer it to have more orange, less yellow, and a little bit red. Either using like a red ink probably, or like a dark magenta ink is usually what I go for. Add that to like the outer parts of the wings as opposed to having the yellow. And then we bring in our dear fiery orange on like these midtones here. And then maybe just filter in a little bit more orange in the core here. Something like this. If we now check the before and the after, you can see how much more dynamic the wings feel. You have more variation in them with tonal variation. It looks more hot in the center and as though it's a little bit cooler on the outside of the wing, so that the heat is like emanating from the core and going out, but getting slightly cooler the further out we get. Small changes, but big difference. Awesome paint job otherwise, and I'm looking forward to seeing the next one. Try spraying with maybe some red inks and maybe some orange inks as a filter on it, or maybe even fluorescent orange would look nice. And I think your miniature is gonna pop even more. Thanks everyone for watching. I hope you learned something from this video. If you did, feel free to smash the like button, maybe subscribe if you want to see more of these videos. If you want to learn more from our tutorials, you can check out our paint sets, maybe even grab the Dragon Strack so you can follow along on that painting tutorial. Massive thanks to all of our patrons. If you want to become a patron, you as well have the opportunity to be a part of these videos, and best of all, you'll get our Patreon videos a week in advance. With that said, have a great day. Bye bye.